Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today's session is the final in a four-part series where we're exploring the various concepts that will help us learn and implement successful DevOps transformation. In today's session, we will learn about the security and compliance principles within DevOps, Azure Security Center, user scenarios, Azure Policy, Azure Blueprints, compliance and site reliability, telemetry data, alerts, and much, much more. So that will be an exciting final part with our trainer, Anthony. And as you know me by now, I'm Hassan Mohsin. I'm the program manager for Microsoft Reactor in Abu Dhabi. Microsoft Reactors are hubs for founders and developers to meet, learn, and connect to local peers, as well as industry leading ideas and technology from Microsoft partners and the open source community. It's also the home to the Microsoft for Startups program, with a diverse mix of hands-on workshops, expert panels, and community events. There's something for everyone. So check out our calendar of events on meetup.com to join and see all the upcoming sessions. We continue the journey with our speaker and Azure technical trainer, Anthony Prem. Anthony is an Azure technical trainer at Microsoft, specialized in Azure infrastructure and applications. Passionate about technology and how it can solve complex business problems. He keeps the customers up for success by providing deep technical advisory, strategic consulting through his trainings. I would encourage you to keep the Q&A tab open during the session. I'll be sharing some resources and learn modules for you to continue the journey after the session. And also I'll be sharing the resources from the past sessions. Since we had them on YouTube, you can also catch them up after the session. Today's session is recorded and it's part of a series that we have on the Reactor YouTube channel. So yeah, keep the discussions and questions coming. I would love to see them and would love to see your feedback also on socials. A few of you have tagged us on Twitter and LinkedIn. So if you have anything to share with us, please do. And without any further delay, I'd love to hand over to Anthony to take us through this final part of our DevOps journey.
Hello everyone, thank you Hussam for the welcome note. Hello everyone, welcome back to another DevOps learning series. My name is Anthony Prem, I work for Microsoft. So today we are going to talk about some of the key security and compliance strategies that how we can implement across the DevOps stages. So let's do a quick recap before we get started. So in the first episode, we take a look at the fundamentals of DevOps transformations, and we explored the various features about Azure DevOps services. In the second episode, we saw how to create a DevOps pipeline and how to publish the source code into the DevOps repository, and we demonstrated the complete pipeline lifecycle. In the third episode, we took a look at the deployment patterns, the various deployment patterns what we have, and how we can implement the feedback mechanism and how we can collect the feedback data from the developer, from the customers, and from the applications. And we had a detailed view about the feedback aspects. So today what we are going to have a look at is that, so we are going to look at all aspects of security and compliance. So as we know, the DevOps have several stages, starting from planning, development, deployment, and release. And we are going to take a look at what are the different stages where we can incorporate the security and how we can take a look at the compliance. So those are some of the key aspects of today's discussion. Let's get started. So let's begin with what is DevOps. So DevOps is basically union of people, process, and product to enable the continuous delivery, to add more value to your end users, to add more value to your business, Basically, DevOps is accelerating the software deployment. And we have spent enough time to understand the whole DevOps concept. But now what we are going to do, how we can integrate the security inside this pipeline. So there is a term which is DevSecOps. So DevSecOps is basically how you are integrating the security principles inside your DevOps pipeline. So basically, when you combine the DevOps and security, this is called the DevOps, and the companies generally have the practice which is called rugged DevOps or DevSecOps. So basically, you can think from three aspects. How you are going to secure your source code, and what are the necessary compliance checks that you can do as part of the DevOps pipeline, and how you can optimize the feedbacks that you are collecting from the your monitoring tools such as Azure Monitor or Application Insights. So to meet these requirements, we generally adopt a practice, which is what rugged DevOps or the DevSecOps. So we are going to take a look at it, how we can scan the source code and how we can perform the compliance checks and how we can optimize the feedback alerts from the monitoring system. So how do we scan the source code? So Azure DevOps is providing various options where you can integrate Azure DevOps services with Azure Visual Studio Marketplace extensions. So you can find plenty of extensions which can help us to support the to perform the vulnerability checks, to perform the static code analysis, to perform the licensing flaws. So there are plenty of tools available in the market. In fact, I have just listed the common tools such as White Source Vault, Veracode, SonarQube, Checkmarks, BlackDuck, and Fortify. Now, these tools can help you to perform the necessary code analysis. It can help us to understand if there is any vulnerabilities in your existing code. And also, these tools will have a seamless integrations with the Azure DevOps ecosystem. Now, if you ask me, which is the tool, which is the best tool, or which tool should I select? It really depends on what applications you have. Some tools may support on certain languages, some tools may certain on certain functionality, some tools may work on certain functionality. So you have to evaluate what you have and then what the tool offer for you. Then you can decide the right strategy which you can incorporate into the DevOps pipeline. So let's take a look at it, how we can incorporate the source scanning mechanisms into our existing pipeline. So in the second module, we looked at how we can implement the DevOps pipeline. So I do have a sample pipeline today. So let's take a look at my pipeline. Okay, so we are going to use a DevOps project. Just a second. Okay, so this is the project that we are going to use today, which is module 4 demo. And inside the module 4 demo, I have already published some source code. So this is our sample website that belongs to Tailwind Traders, and I have already published some of the source codes, and it contains some of the DLLs, it contains some of the configurations. Now, the pipeline
Anthony,
is.
I just want to quickly jump in. You need to switch the screen, yeah. All right, all good now.
Yeah. Okay, so what we are going to do today, we are going to use the module 4. This is the project that we are going to use, and we have already published some content, and also there is a pipeline which is already configured. Now, this is the pipeline that is already configured, where we have different stages, which is staging, canary, and production. Now, as of now, I am not doing any vulnerability checks. The code is just open, and as soon as I update the code will just flow through this pipeline. I don't have anything. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to see how we can integrate the vulnerability checks as part of this pipeline. Now you see here, this is the artifact which is created by the as part of the build process. And here now the release is getting started. There is a release stage, which is staging instance, canary instance, and production instance. Now here I have a pre-deployment conditions, and here I have a post-deployment condition. Now let's imagine I don't want to perform any release unless my code is validated. So what I can do, I can perform the pre-deployment condition. I can activate, certain approval. So let's say I can say some name and putting some approval procedures. Now what this approver has to do, the approver has to evaluate just to make sure that there is no vulnerable exist on your existing code. Now how do we add the vulnerability checks on your code? Well, so what we are going to do as part of this demonstration, so as I said earlier, there are many tools available: White Source Bolt, Veracode, SonarCube, but I'm going to use the White Source Bolt. I'm going to show you how you can install the White Source Bolt extension and how you can integrate this into your pipeline. So to install the extension, you can go to the Visual Studio Marketplace, so which is something you can access from here. Okay, so to access this is the marketplace.visualstudio.com. To access any extension, you can go to the marketplace, and here you can search for the desired, components. In this case, White Source. You can find various tools here, and I'm gonna install this. In this case, it is already installed. All you have to do is just click on the Get It Free and click on the Install option. So once the tool is installed, you will have a necessary components available on the DevOps project. So in this case, this extension is already installed. In case if it is not installed, all you have to do is just install the extension. As soon as you install the extension, you will have the necessary task available inside your DevOps pipeline. Now what we have to do, we have to add certain tasks as part of your build process. So now if you really look at the White Source Bolt documentations, so they will give you the list of steps needs to be configured as part of your build process. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a look at my existing build configuration. So in this case, it is the White Source Bolt is already installed, but actually if you go and look at any content, you don't find any vulnerability report because we haven't added the necessary task in your YAML configurations. Now, the first step, what you have to do, you have to add the necessary command lines. So let's edit this pipeline. Now, as part of this pipeline, this is going to perform certain task. Now here we have to add the necessary task, which is going to perform the necessary source code vulnerability checks here. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy the content. Now this is the White Source Bolt documentations, and here they have mentioned I need to perform the vulnerability checks, you need to add the necessary task in the build. So all you have to do is just copy these lines and let's put it into the pipeline. Okay, so now we have added a task inside our build pipeline and which is going to perform the necessary checks against the source code. So let's copy this, let's save this and trigger this. Okay, so now this is going to take several minutes. It's going to take at least 6 minutes for the whole build process. But then what I'm going to do, I have already have a pre-populated the vulnerability checks, where we are going to see how you can explore the vulnerability checks as part of this pipeline. So now let me go back to the another project, which is DevOps security. And here I have already pre-populated some content. So now, as you know how to add the necessary checks as part of the pipeline. Now, if you actually go back and look at your, if you want to really know, how do we verify the vulnerabilities, right? So all you have to do is just click on the your build task. Now, when you look at this build task, all you have to do is just click on the white source bolt, and here you will be able to identify all the vulnerabilities that exist on your source code. So this is a kind of a similar report that you are going to receive as part of the process. Now, if you recollect this with the deployment gates, as I said, there is a deployment gate. So in the deployment gate, we have configured there is a pre-deployment conditions. So what happens is when we perform any commit, the commit process is going to create a build process, and there is a new artifact will be created, and that artifact will not be released to these stages. Instead, this will be saved inside the this will not be released into the stages. Instead, it's going to ask for the pre-deployment. It's going to ask for the approval. Now, as part of this approval process, the approver has to make sure that you validate the necessary components. So in this case, we have integrated the white source bolt. Just a second. Now, before you release the package to the production, in fact, you can take a detailed look at this assessment report, and as part of this, you can take the necessary feedback, and then you can take a corrective actions. And this basically what it does, it's if there is any vulnerabilities on the existing source, if there is any licensing issue, so you get all the necessary flaws inside the code. And there are some tools. In fact, we just used white source bolt, and in case if you are using some other tool, so the other tool may give you the recommendations to fix that existing code as well. So you have to take a look at the various tools, and you have to evaluate against your list of applications what you have, and then you can take a call. So this is how you can perform the necessary scanning as part of the as part of the DevOps pipeline. Now we can come back here. Definitely, this is going to take several minutes. We can come back here later after 6 minutes, and we can see the similar report inside the white source bolt tab. Okay, so that's the quick explanation or quick demo about the scanning your source code. Now take a look at how we can perform the compliance checks. What are the steps that we have in order to do the necessary compliance checks. Now, as I discussed earlier, we have an option called deployment gate. So deployment gate basically give you an ability to collect the health signals from the external services, which you can evaluate before you release something to the next stages, such as staging or production. So if you look at this picture, we have a pipeline which is development, production, staging, and here we have a pre-deployment condition which we just activated. Now, as part of the pre-deployment condition, we just activated the pre-deployment approval, but then there is also another component called deployment gate. So the deployment gate will take you to a few more options, which is you can check your policy compliance, you can check your Azure monitor status, you can check any quality gate. In fact, if you are using any Sonar Cloud extension, where you can easily from the release gate, you can check if the code has any vulnerabilities. So it really depends on what tool you are using it. Now, what we are going to do for now, we are going to evaluate the compliance checks. So to perform the compliance checks, we are going to use the Azure policy. So Azure policy is basically a set of instruction which you can apply on the tenant level. So the instruction can be your encryption should be activated, your resources should be deployed in XYZ region. So these are some of the policies which you can enforce it on the tenant level. So now let's enforce some policy now. Okay, so now if you look at my screen, I have a policy, I have Azure policy, and this policy have a allowed location policy, where I see some of the resources are compliant and some of the resources are not compliant. So I see 3 resources is not compliant. So basically the Azure policy will give you an ability to evaluate your resources if they are compliant or not. So you can create a individual policy, or you can create a blueprint. So blueprint basically collection of policies to meet specific objective. So let's say you wanted to meet a PCI DSS compliant. So instead of creating the policy one by one, you can take the blueprint and you can deploy it on the tenant level, where you can evaluate if you are meeting the PCI DSS compliant or not. So now I see here my allowed location. There is a policy where I don't have West Europe as a allowed location. So that's why it's showing this as a compliant, incompliant. So now our resources, it's actually located in East US. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to change my policy saying East US is not my desired location. Just for a demonstration, I'm just adding this. So I'm going to make this as I'm going to remove the East US from my policy. So which means my resource is not compliant now. So when I remove this East US, my resource becomes non-compliant. You know, after 2 minutes down the line, you can see all the resources will be not compliant because East US is not my desired location, which I have removed from my policy. So if you connect this with the deployment pipeline, in the pipeline, we can activate another task, another gate. So let's take an example. Okay, so here we'll activate the deployment gate. So the whole purpose of deployment gate is to collect the health signal from your external services and before you release any components. So now we know that this particular instance, web app instance, is not compliant because East US is not listed in the policy. In the policy where we have explicitly say East US is not the allowed location. So of course my instance, my web application instance has become non-compliant resource. Now we can take a call here. In the deployment gate, we can check for the policy evaluation. So we can easily add the policy check for policy compliance. So I am going to select my subscription and let's select the specific resource. So let's say DevOps meetups, and I'm going to select the list of instances what I have. Now I know that this is not comply with the my governance policies. Now what happens is when we perform any commit, when we make any changes, when DevOps is creating a build, when the DevOps is planning to release, in fact, it doesn't go through the deployment gate because it looks for the security checks, and as long as the resources are comply with the company policies, yes, the gate will be allowed. In case if the resource is not comply with the policy, then the deployment will not happen. So you can also invoke Azure Monitor. So let's imagine you have a staging environment where you have deployed. So maybe you can add a another gate after that as part of the post deployment condition. Let's say you can say query Azure Monitor Alerts. So what it does is basically, let's imagine you perform some deployment and you have configured some alerting rule in your Azure Monitor. So let's say CPU utilization or memory utilization or HTTP queue length. So let's imagine the build that you released have some impact. So due to that, there is an alert triggered. So now what happens is here, as part of this pipeline, the post deployment condition, as long as you say query Azure Monitor Alerts, it's going to query if there is any alert triggered because of the latest build what has happened. So if there is any alert, of course, it is going to create a sev1, sev2 tickets based on the conditions what you have. And the deployment cannot go through the production. The deployment gets stops at this level. So Azure DevOps give you the great ability to perform the pre-deployment conditions, post-deployment conditions that can help you to meet some of your security and the governance aspects. Okay, so let's take a look here. If we have the module 4. So I'm not going to configure any monitoring alert now. Just wanted to demonstrate. Okay, so let's take a look at the latest build, what we have done, which is mod 4 demo, which is still going on. Okay, so the latest build, which is 12 minutes ago. Okay, it's still not updated. Okay, so now you know how you can use the DevOps extensions to seamlessly integrate with Azure DevOps services to perform any source code, and also you can how you can perform the necessary compliance checks as part of the DevOps deployment gates. So what we can do now, we can just technically speaking, this deployment will not go through. So I can show you my sample demonstrations from the last night build. So let's take a look at the release. Or I'll just so we will come back and take a look once the build process is complete. It's still going on. Okay. So now let's see, how do we optimize the feedback? So in the last discussion we have had a great discussion about collecting the feedback from the users, collecting the feedback from the customers, and collecting the feedback from the applications. Now, once you start receiving the feedback from the applications, at some, generally the team may entertain with the meaningless alerts. So at some point, we have to completely analyze the telemetry data, and we have to come up with the right baselines. So let's say, how Azure Monitor generates the alert. So Azure Monitor generates alerts based on the rules what you have, the alerts rules what you have created. So for example, if you look at this sev3 alerts, so I have a CPU count where I say if the CPU count exceeding greater than certain number, there is an alert to be generated. Now, as a best practice, you have to constantly evaluate these alerts and try to create a common baseline so that you don't have to spend time on the meaningless alerts. That's the whole point we are trying to say here. So the optimizing your alerts and telemetry data, which is something it is really important, at least in the initial onboarding process. Okay, so now let's take a look at the several ways to authenticate with Azure DevOps. So in DevOps, you predominantly see these terms, which is service connection, personal access token, authorization, and SSH public keys. So let me just have a look if there is any questions. Okay. Okay. Now, okay. Now let's talk about service connection. So let's imagine you have a DevOps project. Now the DevOps project has to deploy some services inside the external services, such as it can be a web app, or it can be some third-party applications. So what we have to do, we have to basically create a service connection between DevOps and the external services. In this case, we have a Azure DevOps, and DevOps has to deploy some packages into the web application. In this case, we have to create a service connection between DevOps and the web application. That is service connection. Now, personal access token. A personal access token. It's basically just a password. It's just a code, and we use personal access token in case if you have any third-party application who wants to access DevOps services. So let's take a look at this one. So I have a application which is Postman. Now the Postman is just a third-party tool, and the Postman, I may use Postman to programmatically update some work item. So in this case, what I can do, I can create a personal access token in the Azure. So for example, let's go back here. To create a personal access token, you can look at your profile and where you can create a personal access token. And you can create a token for your third-party applications, and you can exchange that token to your to your application, and then you can update any content. For example, let's go ahead and create a work item from Postman. So this is programmatically I am writing a extension work item. Now, if you go back here, your project and board, and you see here the work item that we just published from the Postman utility. So this is basically I just wanted to explain how the pact is used. And now the other option is authorization. So authorization is, let's imagine we have a native services like a logic app or application insights. Now these application insights or logic app wants to perform certain tasks on the DevOps. Let's imagine application insights, and we are where we are reading the telemetry data. Now these telemetry data, if there is any bugs identified, we wanted to automatically update the work item. So in this case, we prefer to use authorization rather than the personal access token, because these services like Apps Insight, Logic App, they are first-party applications which is well integrated with the Azure Active Directory. So you can still rely on the authorizations. But when you are dealing with the third-party applications, of course, you will not be able to use the native RBAC capabilities. So you can use the PAT, personal access token. The final thing is SSH key authentication. So the SSH key authentication is mainly in case if you are having any Linux or if you are having any Mac workstations where you are integrating with the DevOps service, then you may use the SSH authentications. I will just go back to our pipeline and see if any failures. So let's take a look at the pipeline. Okay, the build task is completed. So I see the build task is completed. So where we updated the vulnerability checks codes for the white source bolt. So this is the module 4, and you should be able to see the list of vulnerabilities that exist in your source code. So this is how we perform the scan. Now the second aspect is we looked at the compliance checks. Now if you go back to the release, and you see here So the first one is waiting for the deployment queue. Okay, I think it's not yet started, so we can come back and check further. But in fact, this deployment also will not go through. The reason it will not go through, you will see the failure at this stage. It's going to say that your target resources is not comply with the organization policy, because we made a changes in this Azure policy. And if you look at the resource compliance level, it's still not reflecting, but ideally, yes, this the resources does not comply with the policy what we have. East US is still not there. Okay, we can come back after some time and take a look at it. Okay, so now there's one more final thought before we wind up. So here are some of the best practices. So what are the best practices that you can implement as part of the DevOps pipeline, or when you are dealing with any DevOps deployment? So you have to pay attention on protecting your credentials and secrets. So you can you can limit sharing the credential wherever possible. Instead, you can use the features like a key vault. Key vault is the secure container. It's like it's a equivalent to the hardware security module, where we can securely store the keys, passwords. And then from the identity perspective, you can implement the multi-factor authentication, privileged identity management, just-in-time access, just enough administration, and use role-based access control wherever possible. Because if you share the credential, which means you are sharing the credentials to the developer, so basically he is seeing the credential. But if you are using the features like a managed identity RBAC, then you don't have to worry about exchanging the secrets to the developers. And you should potentially implement the static code analysis, dynamic code analysis process wherever possible. In fact, I just showed you how we can implement the securing the scanning the source code. Then finally, leveraging Security Center, Azure Security Center. So what is Azure Security Center? So Azure Security Center is the posture management tool. So let's imagine you have a solution and where you deployed various resources. Now, how do we know that whether those resources are secure or not, right? So this is where Azure Security Center is going to greatly help us, because Security Center is the posture management tool, and using the Security Center, you can take a look at the overall security score for your organization. So you can access the Security Center from the Azure portal, Security Center. So you get an understanding, if your resources are comply with the org policies, or if there is any, threats, evolving in your solution, or what are the ways to optimize increase your security of your solution. So Security Center does provides the recommendations. So I see here there are a lot of red flag items. I can go through these red flag items and I can take a corrective actions, because Security Center does provide the necessary recommendations. So yeah, so those are some of the key things that you must do as part of your securing solutions. Now, the other point is leverage Azure ATP. So ATP is advanced threat protections. So let me explain how ATP works. So ATP, how this works is basically we are taking the Active Directory, logs. So if you look at your Active Directory, there are some events like a security events. So let's say if I am performing some brute force attack, what happens is Active Directory receives those events and it says, okay, there is a wrong password attempt is happening. Now, those days initially before ATP days, and we have to go back to the Active Directory logs and look at if any anomaly is happening. But ATP, how this ATP works is that ATP, we are configuring something called port mirroring. We are redirecting all the traffic which are going to the Active Directory to the ATP using some sensor. Basically, we install some sensor on the domain controller, and then those using that sensor, ATP receives all the data. Now, since ATP collecting all the necessary data from the domain controller, such as application log, event log, it correlates, and this is the ATP dashboard, and the ATP dashboard you can see, if there is any pass the hash attack or any such attacks, every information will be handily available here, and then your admin can take this information and then to do the necessary optimization to secure your ecosystem further. So those are some of the key points that you should consider. And in a high level, and so far what we discussed, it's more of within your application. Now let's imagine beyond your application, you have to look at security from the whole solution, right? Now, overall, how Microsoft looking at the security is that security is the shared responsibility, which means customer have some responsibility, Microsoft has to have some responsibility, and it is the layered approach. If it is layered approach, means we look at the security at the multiple layers such as identity, network, platform, applications, data, governance, and security operations center. Now, from Azure perspective, we are offering plenty of security features, amazing features. So you can leverage these features and you can implement these features across your solution so that your solution can become super strong. So if you think from the identity perspective, we have a multi-factor authentication, RBAC, ID protection. So ID protection is the great features. What it does is basically it evaluates the risk level for the sign-in attempt. Let's say if I am logging into my system, so if I am logging in from some anonymous location, maybe my risk level may be on the higher side. So then you can apply the conditional access policy if I wanted to give access or not. So those are some of the key things that you can do from the identity perspective. And networks perspective, we have great features like a private link, service endpoint, DDoS protection, Azure firewall. So these are some of the key products. Now, let's imagine you have a SQL database and you don't want SQL database to be accessed over the internet. Instead, it has to be securely located in the private network. Of course, you can use the private link, service endpoint. These are the components. Now, from the platform perspective, we make sure you develop the security baseline for your services. Now, let's imagine you are deploying the Kubernetes cluster. So there are some baselines for the Kubernetes cluster, and Microsoft proactively work with CIS, which is known for the security institution. Now, here in the, let me just show you some sample, the benchmark. Now, this is a standard benchmark for the Kubernetes benchmark. Similarly, you can find the benchmark for the web app, benchmark for the SQL database, and you can take those benchmark and you can make sure that you apply these benchmarks on your various applications. So that's one of the key points that you can think from the security perspective. Now, from application perspective, make use of conditional access, make use of your device compliance. And from data perspective, make sure you have the right level of encryption, encryption at rest, encryption in transit, make use of the key vault. Now, from the governance perspective, we have a Azure Policy. You can make use of the blueprint. So blueprint basically collection of policies and which you can apply on the subscription level. In fact, you can use the blueprint for as a infrastructure as a code deployment model. And eventually we will have a security operations center, right? We have a SIM solution which is called Sentinel. So Sentinel, how this works is we are collecting the logs, metrics from various sources and storing it in the log analytics workspace. And the log analytics workspace, it's just a data store. Sentinel further enrich the data store, and it can find any anomalies happening inside that your solution. So these are some of the great way to secure your whole solution. Right? So let's that being said, let's take a look at our deployment gate if we have any failure on the on the gate. Okay, so let's take a look at the release, and here I see there is it's still queued. I think this have some other issue, but ideally what you will see is you will see this deployment will not go through because the target resource is not comply with the policy, and you will see the failure at the deployment gate. And I see here there are a lot of resources is not comply with the policy what we have defined. So the deployment gate collects the health signal from the here in the policy, and it know that this is the instance that we were deploying, which is meetup stage demo, and this is not compliant. Basically, this deployment gate is look at this signal, and now it evaluate whether this particular resource is comply or not. If it is not comply, then definitely the deployment will not go through. Instead, the deployment will fail at this stage. Okay. So let's take a look at if there is any question. Yeah, so there was a question which is basically any time limit for the personal access token. Yes, when you create a personal access token, you can set the time limit. In fact, you have an option in the while creating the token. So let's say I'm creating a new token. So yes, you can say when you want it to expire. So you can set the time limit. And also you can explicitly specify the permission level. So let's say if I want to just publish maybe some work item, maybe I can say, yes, I can say read and write only on the work item. So you don't want to give a full access across the DevOps, right? So these are some of the limitations that you can do inside the PAT token. So can security for the legacy system be applied via the current model? Well, so Azure DevOps is basically it's a tool which you can integrate with various services, various third-party tools, not only from the Microsoft perspective, but also it much integrated with ISV's products. So we have a well integrated supportability across various platforms. So definitely you can evaluate if in case if a specific requirement is not addressed by tool A, probably tool X may address your specific requirements, but then we need to do the necessary research and identify the right tool sets for your solution. So do you recommend a different security approach depending on the CACD pattern? So CACD, it's all about continuous integration and continuous deployment, where we talk about the deployment within the pipeline. Now, let me go back to the presentation. And yes, so here, okay, just a second. Yeah. This is the CACD pipeline, and you can, in fact, I just listed the very few points in a very high level, but then yes, you can, in fact, you can add the necessary task as needed. For example, if you are doing any penetration testing or if you are doing any load testing, yes, you can add the necessary task inside the pipeline, and there are plenty of tools available, and this is something absolutely customizable. The point what we are trying to make is, so Azure DevOps have the full integrations capabilities where you can incorporate the different security levels at any stages. So that is what we call it as a DevSecOps. So you have a full ability to integrate the various security stages across the DevOps cycle. Okay, so that, let me have a quick check if my release is succeeded. Yeah, I just have to approve. It's asking for approval. Now I just approved. Now what is going to happen is, now basically it's a pre-deployment gate processing. Now this is a stage where this is pre-deployment gate is going to check. Basically now the health signal is going to be evaluated. Now this will not move further because definitely this is going to fail. Shortly you will see the failure at this stage, because the end instance, which is this instance, it's not comply with the Azure policy, because this instance is located in East US, but as per policy, East US is not the right location, right? So now this is going to fail. Definitely this is going to fail, and this evaluation to start in 5 minutes. I think it's going to take few minutes, but yes, this will not move further. The deployment gets stuck here. So this is another way to measure the compliance checks before you release your packages. Okay, so let's move on now. Okay, so I think pretty much we completed today's agenda. So the point here is security is the layered approach. As you're offering plenty of various security tools, you can implement the necessary features at the various layers. In this way, you can secure your whole ecosystem. So that's the end of today's presentation. So let's quickly summarize what we have discussed. So, in the overall, we got a clear understanding about deploying the, creating Azure DevOps project. We deployed the DevOps pipeline, and then we gone through the various deployment patterns, feedback mechanisms, and finally we looked at some of the best practices what we could implement across the various stages. So hope that information is useful. And in case if you have any question, just feel free to let us know, and definitely if required, we can organize another session. So thank you so much for joining in the past couple of weeks, and thank you so much. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Anthony, for today's session and for putting together the DevOps series over the past few weeks. We enjoyed this journey with you as we discussed various topics to help us all along, like with as a community, implement the various DevOps concepts within our projects and within our organizations. We got a couple of minutes, so if there are some questions coming in, so I'm just gonna publish these. Feel free, Anthony, to let us know your thoughts on the last question about white source.
Okay, so white source vault limited to checking specific code vulnerabilities, or can I check on any code? Okay, well, so every extensions, some extensions may be free and some extensions may be, there is a cost applicable. So some free module, you may get some limited component, and the paid version, you may have some extensive capabilities. So what's White Source Vault in general, yes, it does check the vulnerabilities, and also it also checks the licensing if there is any open source licensing issues. And some other tools like a Vera code, it does provide the recommendations, and also it give you the steps to fix that issues. So this is something as a customer we have to analyze, because I may use Java application, you may use .NET application. So some tools may be perfect for the .NET application, some tools may be perfect for the Java application. So some level of analysis is definitely required. So the way we showed you, it's just a very basics, how you can install the extension and how you can integrate that with the pipeline. But yes, you have to do some detailed analysis before you finalize the right tool sets.
All right, I'm sharing some more resources here in the Q&A tab. So there is this link where it put together all the sessions of this series. So they will be on YouTube, including today's session. I've shared that as well in the Q&A tab. So you can refer to these. And also some of you mentioned some topics on security and some questions. And I shared some past session that we did on the Sentinel. So there will be some more coming up in April, so stay tuned for that. And there is also an interesting series coming up next month that I would love also to drop here in the Q&A tab. So if you are interested in learning all about apps on Azure. So in this series, it's a 4-part series where we'll be talking about the most popular Azure cloud services. So you can check out the link I just shared with you in the announcements, and you can also join these sessions. I think it should be all good for now. There are no more questions. Thank you so much for the great feedback, and please spend a minute or two on the survey as well. Use the session ID 12721. So it's the first link, the first announcement I shared. I'm just gonna, for the ease of access, I'm just gonna share that again in the chat. So if you go on the survey, use that event ID, you can send us your feedback about the series and about all the topics that you would love to see them in the reactor. This is a good feedback for us to know all about the things you love to see at the reactor.
Finally, by the way, the security compliance check is evaluated here. I see there is a failure, so which means this is how we validate the policy compliance. All right, thank you so much for joining, and have a wonderful day.
All right, goodbye everyone, and see you in the next one.